All right, we're live.
Excellent. Okay, well, glad to be here, and I will start this off since once again I am moderating. Welcome to this discussion about this wonderful book, Polysecure, which came out today. We're going to be talking about attachment and non-monogamy. I'm kind of excited about this particular little session because it's going to be basically me and three therapists talking about this. By the way, my name is Zach Budd. I am a clinical student over at the University of Houston Graduate College of Social Work. I'm also a consent educator and sexuality educator, and I am proud to be speaking to you from my home, which resides on the ancestral lands of the Akokisa, Atakapa, and Karankawa peoples. And I'd like to introduce our panel today for this wonderful discussion about this book. First off, we have Kate Kincaid. Kate is a licensed professional counselor and the co creator of Southwest Love Fest. Awesome stuff, by the way. A conference on ethical non monogamy relationships, identity, and community. Kate runs a group private practice called Tucson Counseling Associates that specializes in working with LGBTQ clients, people in ethically non monogamous relationships, and people seeking psychedelic integration therapy. Welcome, Kate, and hello. I also have my friend, Nolan Lawless. Nolan is a licensed professional counselor, sex educator, public speaker, and polyamory advocate. He is a co founder of Deconstructing Polyamory, also good stuff, through which he has presented across the US and Canada on alternative sexuality and alternative relationship models. Nolan serves as CEU coordinator for Loving More, which is also a great organization, which is a national nonprofit organization for polyamory and is a member of the APA Division 44 Task Force on Consensual Nonmonogamy. He's also the owner of Infinite Heart Coaching, which provides video conference coaching services to clients of diverse gender identities, sexual orientations, and relationship dynamics. And last but certainly not least is our esteemed author, Jessica Fern. Hey, Jess.
Hi.
Jessica is a psychotherapist, public speaker, and trauma and relationship expert. In her international private practice, Jessica works with individuals, couples, and people in multiple partner relationships. Jess is the author of this wonderful new book, Polysecure, Attachment, Trauma, and Non-Monogamy, and it is the reason we are here today. By the way, folks, that book came out today. Those of us that pre-ordered, I was lucky. I pre-ordered my Kindle copy, and it downloaded this morning when I woke up. However, apparently the interest in this book is bigger than even anybody could have anticipated because Amazon ran out. Your local
Victor.
bookstore is out. My paper copy that I was buying precisely so I can get it autographed by the author is going to be delayed like I think they told me 2 to 3 weeks or
Yeah.
less. So the good news is Thorntree Press, who is also amazing, is on it. They are going to be sending out copies as soon as possible. Go get the book. It is going to be critically important. Now that I've run my mouth about that, welcome all of you, and let's jump into this conversation about this awesome book.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach.
No problem, no problem, no problem. Welcome to all of you. So gosh, I'm so excited because I am training to be what you all are. So I'm like talking to some of my, I guess, mentors, idols, whatever you want to call it. And yet I'm fascinated because this book I see as going to be sort of a game changer for those of us that are going to be not only therapists, but work therapists who work with non-monogamy clients. And I'm wondering, I just kind of want to jump in without getting, too basic and some of the other stuff that'll be in the book and definitely recommend people going out there is for all of you, how do you see this really working into your practices with your clients who may be non-monogamous or even the ones who aren't? Are there things that you may discover or see in this book as far as attachment theories and attachment styles for people who are, non-monogamous that may help people who are either monogamous or non-monogamous? And we can start with Jess.
Great. Well, yes, of course, the book is written to hopefully help people who are looking at their attachment and are non-monogamous. And it really came from a lot of my observations that I would see my clients who were really struggling with the transition into non-monogamy. And often they were pathologized or they were labeled as just being jealous. And as we dig deeper, I'd see that this isn't necessarily jealousy or just them having meltdowns. It was attachment ruptures that were happening, and that their whole attachment system was getting activated. And, they were really needing support. And when we would focus on whether it was an individual or multiple partners or a pairing of working on more secure functioning, people healed, and then they could really successfully, healthfully do non-monogamy.
Fantastic. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Kate, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm super excited. I haven't read it yet, obviously, but I also pre-ordered it, and now I think I'm waiting like a month or something.
Wow. Yeah.
But I'm really excited because I talk a lot about attachment with my clients, and I recommend the current books like Me Tight, and those are all amazing, but it's always like, and this is from a monogamous standpoint, and so just like change the language for yourself to be non-monogamous. And so I'm really excited about a book that was written by a non-monogamous person for non-monogamous people specifically.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Nolan, thoughts?
I feel like I'm spoiled here because I've actually gotten to read some of this book. I was very lucky to be one of the
early readers
for Gesto.
Yeah.
I got very lucky about that. So I can tell you from experience, this is an absolutely wonderful piece of work. And one of my favorite things that really attracted me to this discussion from the first time that I ever heard Jess speak about it a couple of years ago was that she addresses the fact that so much of what we call security in monogamous relationships is really a structure that's providing the security instead of finding security in the relationship. And that one of the big things that we see in failings in non-monogamous relationships is that people try to replicate the structure instead of actually moving away from leaning on the structure and instead leaning on each other to create that security.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely,
for me, like I started integrating that concept into my practice immediately the first time that I heard it, because that's true of non-monogamous or monogamous relationships as well. It's true of parent-child relationships. And it's something that nobody really talks about much, that, hey, you can't create a structure to replicate true security. And I just love it. I love the way that she's discussed it and described it. And in this book, it goes so much more in depth in it, but it's an amazing concept.
And I'm curious, Nolan, what have you seen as you've used that concept in your practice?
One of the things that I've seen, especially when I've been working with parent-child relationships, not necessarily in the non-monogamous sense, but even in parent-child relationships, that a lot of times we'll create these things to try to create that sense of security for the child, where it's like, okay, so here's this board that you can go and look at that looks at all these things, and then here's this star system, and here's all these things, and they're wonderful ideas. But I live in a military community, and what I notice is when somebody deploys or when somebody comes back from deployment, those systems completely collapse because it was never really about the system. And they don't understand. It's like, oh, well, the stars are still there. I can still do the stars. No, Daddy does the stars, and Daddy's not here. Well, why does that matter? Well, because it was never about the stars.
Wow. Okay, man, that's awesome. So I want to be clear real quick, because I know, again, I'm talking to 3 therapists, and I'm kind of excited about this because I'm training to be a therapist. So I'm kind of like taking notes from all of you at the moment. But I do want to be clear, having read the book myself, again, also, like Nolan said, feeling very lucky about that. This book is accessible to everyone. It actually is in 3 parts. The first part is where it explains, the attachment theory to you so that you have a basic understanding of it. The second part is the different type of attachment styles and whatnot. And then lastly, it kind of shows sort of wrapping up attachment into attachment theories and into being non-monogamous and non-monogamous constructs. And so there's a clear discussion about structural, types of security and things like that. So I don't want anybody to be scared away because I'm chatting with a bunch of therapists here. Yes, I'm probably going to buy a copy of this book from my own therapist, and by all means, buy a copy, hand it to your therapist if they are not themselves non-monogamous. And if they are, do it anyway. I mean, this is going to be a fantastic book for anyone to help understand these things. So yeah, definitely, that's awesome. So I guess I want to throw something out real quick. Why does attachment sort of matter in non-monogamy, as far as attachment theories and whatnot? Why is it so much of as I can see, a benefit to everyone to understand attachment theories in relationships, and then specifically in non-monogamous relationships? And anyone can take that one, whoever wants to jump in.
So one of you want to take that first? Or do you
Come
want
on, Kate.
No. I'm a slow processor.
I'll jump in, and then I want to hear from you all too. But yeah, in general, attachment is important because we're talking about human bonding. and, the depth of human bonding and connection, and the importance of feeling safe and secure in our partnerships, and how we can either feel more secure or the different 3 types of insecure styles and all the challenges that can arise from that. So that's important for all of us. But in non-monogamy, we have multiple bonding attachment relationships, right? We're intentionally pursuing, especially polyamory, multiple loves. And so what happens is you find that, how do I do this? How do I actually have attachment-based relationships where I'm emotionally engaged and accessible and responsive to more than one person? And then, one of the things I talk about a bunch in the book is that non-monogamy is inherently more of an insecure relationship structure. So even people who feel to themselves to be pretty secure will still experience the shift into sometimes more insecurity just by the shift in the paradigm that they're in, right? And another thing we see is that a lot of people with multiple partners, they'll actually wind up expressing different attachment styles with different partners, and it's surprising. And they don't necessarily know how to deal with that. Oh, I'm more preoccupied and grasping over here with this partner and more avoidant and withdrawn with somebody else. So, yeah.
Cool. Nolan, you want to shoot at it? Or I'm sorry, go for it, Kate.
Yeah.
I sounded like you were being brave. Go for it.
Thank you. Yeah, I've noticed that too. Or that's a point that I wanted to talk about too, that you can be a different style in different relationships and sometimes multiple styles. So you have multiple relationships and then multiple styles, so multiple feelings that you're dealing with. So it's complicated, and having an understanding of that theory just relieves a lot of the confusion. Like, okay, it's like okay for me to be different styles in different relationships, or I'm not stuck in a box of like, this is how I am because this is how I was in my first relationship. And I see a lot of people that have been in long-term monogamous relationships and then open up, and so they thought they were one way, and now they're seeing actually there's a lot more to me. I'm multiple ways, and so it's a lot to unpack for people.
Yeah, experiencing that shift from different paradigms. And would you almost say that, and we'll give Nolan a chance real quick, but I want to follow up. Would you almost say that because of the inherent sort of instability in non-monogamy, that it's almost kind of foolish to expect to switch from a monogamous paradigm to non-monogamy and have the exact same sort of experience of attachment and security? Would you think that would just be that would be, if anything, we could warn people away from? Don't expect everything to be exactly the same, and you're not going to somehow construct the type of security that you have or think you have in monogamy.
Yeah. Okay. That's a conversation I have with almost every almost every client that comes in thinking that they're going to recreate monogamy X, monogamy in multiple relationships, and it's just kind of going through that whole disillusionment process. No, that's not how it's going to be. It's going to be confusing, and you're going to be different, and you don't really know how you're going to be yet.
Just monogamy in parentheses +1, and everything is fine, right? Yeah. Nolan, thoughts?
Kate, you actually segued perfectly into what I was wanting to say, because we live in a monocentric kind of society. We're all subjected to a monocentric kind of social programming. No matter how we're raised, no matter how we operate in our own personal lives, we're getting that messaging all the time from media, from other people, just constantly. And in the monogamous world, a lot of times the kind of interconnection, almost to the point of codependency, that gets promoted as being not only healthy but desirable and romantic in romantic relationships, can be really destructive when it's expanded into non-monogamy, because like you said, it's not like you're just multiplying that out over and over again, and you can't create that level of codependency on multiple people or having that many people codependent on you. It's not possible, it's not healthy, and it can be very destructive. And in monogamy, people kind of miss that, and in non-monogamy, it gets shown much faster how dangerous it is, but a lot of times people miss that piece. And by understanding how those attachment styles work and how a healthy versus unhealthy attachment can look, it becomes a lot clearer why that isn't working, why that's so destructive.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, I can see that. I want to go back real quick and just touch on something that you mentioned, Jess, only because this is kind of where I get to jump in a little bit. When you talked about non-monogamy inherently being less stable, that isn't to say that it's better or worse. It just means that, as Nolan was saying, there's so much of the sort of external socialization, social programming, and an entire, mononormative society that is designed to hold up the monogamous structure, that there is, it seems that, non-monogamy can be so less stable because it doesn't have those supports and those backups and, all kinds of people helping you be more monogamous and things like that. Not to mention the fact that you can almost flip it the other way and say that non-monogamy, because it does allow so many options, in other words, there's more movement and more freedom, is going to inherently be more stable, but it doesn't have to be insecure, right?
Yeah.
So that, the opportunities to move around are there. And so I wanted to kind of make that point and say that we can see non-monogamy as less stable and look at it as sort of, it's less stable because it's not held in and constricted. It has more opportunities and more freedoms, which is not necessarily a good or a bad thing, but that's why it's not as stable, because, there's the assumptions that are inherently built in to monogamy that create almost a false sense of security, because there's not a whole lot of freedoms or where, other directions that things can go. And of course, we can talk into fidelity and other things some other time. We'll leave that for another moderated discussion real quick. So I want to give you two, both Kate and Nolan, especially Nolan, since you've read the book, any opportunity you would like, if you want to ask, Jess a question about this particular book as far as it would pertain to your practices or anything. No? Fine, I'll do all the question asking.
I feel like I didn't do my homework. Like, I'm not prepared for this. Like,
yeah, you think I was going to just do it all by myself? No, I'm kidding. No, I'm sitting here jazzed to learn from all you guys. That's why I've got a clean notebook and a brand new pen. I'm just ready to roll here. So
we do have a question in the comments.
Go for it.
You want to read it for us?
Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, Brian's question.
Let me see. I will jump in here real quick. And where is it? I'm not seeing it, but that's
right.
My fault if you want to.
I'll read it. Yeah, Brian asks, I'm curious what empirical or clinical studies, if any, have been done with attachment paradigms in non-monogamous relationships. Any large controlled studies yet? So great question, Brian. I do talk about it in the book, but it's very brief. There's only like a handful of studies, and it's survey data and maybe, 200-300 people. I think there was a study of maybe 1,200 folks. And the basic gist is the research shows that non-monogamous folks have no different attachment styles from monogamous, or sometimes they will actually show to be more secure. So it's limited, it's very infantile in the research, but it is promising at the least. Yeah.
Brian, it sounds like an opportunity for you to jump in and do that research yourself.
Exactly, right.
I think we'd all thumbs up and be happy to read that at some point.
Yeah.
Nolan, you had a thought there?
Yeah, because something that Jess and I had talked about a couple of months ago when we sat down and talked about some of these things was that another point that has come out in the research is that there might be an assumption that people who are already insecurely attached are more likely to be in non-monogamous relationships. And as far as the research that we have, which again is very limited, that does not appear to be the case. It doesn't seem like being insecure inherently drives you to non-monogamy or vice versa. So we need to look at it from the standpoint that whether or not somebody is oriented as being monogamous or non-monogamous really is not connected to childhood attachment or adult attachment when they come into the relationships, which means what I think is really interesting about this is that the insecurities that come out during an opening up process are inherent on kind of every part of it. It's not like this is a specialized group that was already predisposed to be insecure. It's uncovering what's already there in probably the entirety of society that other people are hiding with those structures and just kind of brushing under the rug.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So then that kind of answers a question that I was going to ask earlier, which is, can you use an already identified attachment style to as a predictor of whether somebody will have either success or failure in consensual non-monogamy, or vice versa? I mean, is there any way, you know what, that person is going to be an A+ candidate for non-monogamy? You know, let's put you into this corner and whatnot. Or, I mean, is that something that someone can do, or do you just not know until you go through?
I don't think we can really predict it, honestly. I mean, I think we can say that if someone truly is in secure functioning, they are going to fare better. That doesn't mean, though, they won't have struggles. And if people are experiencing insecure styles, it is going to be harder. But the beauty of attachment theory is that, you know, these are strategies that were learned because of the environment and the conditions that we were in, and they can be healed and unlearned. And what happens a lot of times, as I see, is non-monogamy, because it can expose, like Nolan, you're saying, all of these kind of originally invisible attachment insecurities. People are really actively healing them and working through them because they kind of have to, because you're going to sink if you don't in non-monogamy, right? And so, whereas a lot of folks, because monogamy can be a buffer for their insecure style, they don't necessarily have to do the work of healing it. It's interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Definitely. Okay, then. And there was another question that I saw that I really wanted to get your thoughts on. And actually, I might do this for everybody, but we'll start with Jess since it's your book. Without going into all of them, because we don't have the time to, you know, sort of summarize the whole book here real quick. How do the different attachment styles sort of show up in polyamory or in non-monogamy? You know, and are there ways to sort of, you know, kind of see maybe examples you could throw out of, so this is how somebody may respond to that
and this part isn't so much actually in the book. Someone did ask a question I want to just answer and then have us do this one, but they're asking if the book is inclusive of strategies for building security in polyamorous relationships. And yes, that is the entire point of the book, is to help people who are polyamorous, non-monogamous, to build security without assuming mononormativity or prescribing mononormative behaviors to get your security. But this is something Nolan and I have been talking about, and so I'd love, Nolan and Kate, for you to chime in on this, and you too, Zach, of just when we see, like, what is someone with more of an avoidance style or preoccupied style? How do they tend to do their non-monogamy differently, right? So one of the things, so I'll give an example of, you know, I'll see my clients who are more in a preoccupied style, they might fight more for hierarchy, right? Or they might need constant reassurance from their partners before a date, but it's never enough, right? When they're really actively in that style. They might do a lot of the cart before the horse, like, you know, their partner hasn't even gone on the first date and they're already assuming that their partner is like going to move in with this person, right? That those are the things I can see with the more preoccupied style. With avoidant, often when someone has an avoidance style, their partners will complain they're not getting enough information from the person with a dismissive style, right? And they might think that they're giving enough information, but often their partners complain that, like, very important details seem to get left out, even though they might not be intentionally doing it, right? Something else I'll see is, so people who are more relationship anarchist or solo polyamory, I want to be very clear. This doesn't mean that they're more of any of those styles. I see all four styles, you know, expressed in people who are solo poly or RA. But some people who are more dismissive might use solo polyamory to kind of keep people at arm's length, right? Or to be vague in creating sort of certain distinctions or commitments or labels in a relationship. Yeah. So those are some of the tendencies I can see. What would you all say?
Yeah, I would echo that. Go ahead, Nolan.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'd echo that. And I was just thinking of certain people, like, you know, I have like a clear kind of image of clients or people I know in my life too that I would categorize that way. And with the avoidant style, yeah, a lot of miscommunications happening, or like, yeah, like you said, they thought they communicated clearly about things, but it was pretty vague or like intentionally vague, maybe. And then a lot of talk of like feeling controlled or like their boundaries are being pushed and like someone's controlling their behavior. That's a common thing that I see with avoidant.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah.
And-
As far as I mean, I'm speaking as myself, being solo poly, but knowing that I am pretty well attached to my partners. I kind of think insecurity can come from just about anywhere, particularly in polyamory, and it'll sneak up. You may have somebody who just is one of those folks that is just always comfortable, and for some reason one particular relationship has a different sort of attachment amongst it. That's the thing that I think you were mentioning earlier, is that there's congratulations, this is your attachment style, and that is how you're going to be attached to every person you ever are in a relationship with, particularly when you're non-monogamous and you're in multiple relationships at once. It's you don't get always dealt the actual straight flush. I mean, sometimes you do have different types of attachments, and it becomes necessary to sort of navigate those, which is why so much of polyamory is that introspection and sort of understanding yourself, and then realizing this is how I'm going to present or push out or rather interact, and then then understanding that the partners that you're with, this person is going to communicate differently. If your attachment style with them is this and their response is that, this is how we have to navigate that, and those are different conversations with partner A than they would be with partner B, C, D, or F. So yeah, I mean, I would like to think that I'm pretty securely attached to the people that are in my life, because I love them dearly for no other reason than they are pretty awesome to me. So, but I mean, I won't lie and say that in my journey with polyamory, there's never been some significant insecurities and some challenges that I've had to work through and either learn more about myself or, figure out why it is that happens in that particular relationship. So, yeah, I mean, I won't lie and say that when I was reading this book that I didn't kind of notice some things that I had seen before, either from somebody else or myself, and be like, oh, so not exactly called out, but that sounds familiar, that type of thing. So yeah, definitely.
There's something else I see too, where it can be very difficult. I often see this where maybe there's a married couple that's polyamorous and one partner feels more secure with their spouse, and then they start to show a lot of anxious, preoccupied hypervigilance with another partner. And they become really hyper focused and like distraught and upset and emotionally engaged in ways that they're not doing with their spouse. And the spouse can almost take that anxious attachment as like, oh, you care more about that other person, or you feel more passion for them, or you have more desire for them. And we can confuse passion. We can confuse anxious attachment for like passion, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what we were saying earlier about how in the monocentric world, a lot of times we promote these very unhealthy attachment styles as being positive, because we expect people to look at one specific person and say, you're going to meet all of my needs 100% of the time. And one of the things that I love about kind of the emergence of the cultural moment of non-monogamy is that it's contributed to a lot better understanding, even in the monogamous world, of the importance of not putting all of the weight of relationships on one person. All of a sudden, the girls' nights and guys' nights are not only being normalized, but they're being encouraged. You're being encouraged that, hey, maybe it's not okay to not have any friends of a different gender orientation than you because your partner's not comfortable with it. Maybe we need to look at these things and say, well, what is it that we're really concerned about? And so there's a lot of really positive things that are coming out of this in general, I think, not just within the non-monogamous community. And it's coming in part from the non-monogamous community. And so I'm really hoping that as this book kind of takes off, which it already is, like, I can't believe it's sold out already. That's amazing. And we get this information out there, that hopefully this will go into attachment research and attachment conversations in general. And it won't just be something that's a non-monogamous thing, that everybody can say, hey, maybe we should stop leaning on structures and start leaning on the relationships to create security. And maybe that'll work better.
Yeah, go figure. If you're going to make a stronger relationship rather than building things outside of it, why not make the relationship itself a little stronger? I'm curious, and I'm going to ask this to all three of you, in your travels as, clinicians, have you been able to sort of tell the difference between somebody attaching a certain way during NRE or their actual attachment style? Like, is it,
Mm.
this person seems very, very, securely attached to this person, or is it they're hyper focused because it's NRE and this is a brand new thing? Of course, NRE being the new relationship energy that I'm pretty sure is in the glossary of the book, if I recall correctly.
I think it is.
So, yeah, I think it is. So yeah, so it's in there. So I'm trying not to use too much esoteric language here. But yeah, I'm wondering if you all have seen or have identified a way to sort of tell the difference between this is their attachment style, or let me give this 6 months for that to wear off and then see how attached they are to this person.
I'm excited about this one. Can I take this one?
Take it.
Okay,
Please.
I knew I was going to get to bring this up somewhere in there. We're going to talk about Harry Harlow and his monkeys for a second. I love talking about the Harlow monkey studies. So Harlow did this great research about secure attachment by using monkeys that were separated from their mothers and then given these artificial mothers that were supposed to mimic different aspects of what created a healthy parent-child relationship. And so the point of this was supposed to be about learning about parent-child relationship, but what it really did is it showed these attachment styles in reality, because the securely attached monkeys would go over, they'd hold on to the mother monkey analog, whatever it was, and then they would go out and explore the room and then come back, and then go out and explore the room and then come back. And then some of them would panic and cling to the mother analog and wouldn't let go. And some of them would run to the far side of the enclosure and hide there and never approach the mother. So there you go. Like, there's your secure, your anxious, preoccupied, and your dismissive avoidant. And that's the best way, I think, to differentiate between NRE and secure attachment. Is secure attachment doesn't require you be on top of that other person 24/7. Secure attachment doesn't require that you go into a panic state if they haven't messaged you back in 5 minutes. Secure attachment is about wanting to engage with them, but being comfortable when you're apart. And even in NRE, you can have that comfort of being apart. You can be excited about, oh, I have this new relationship. I'm so excited to get to see you tonight, but not be stressed out about what they're doing in the meantime. So that's how I would look at it from that differentiation standpoint. And yeah, I'm just excited I got to bring up the monkeys. It's
No, yeah, it's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Kate, Jess, any thoughts on the different styles in NRE?
Yeah, that's a really good point that you brought up, Nolan. Like, that feeling comfortable, even though you're longing for them or you're excited about them, it's not like the anxiety. And I think there's levels to it. Like, you can be a little bit anxious because it is more insecure because it's a new relationship. You don't know what's going to happen. You're getting to know each other. But I guess it's kind of a matter of how distressing it is. And if it's really distressing, that probably isn't the first time somebody's felt that way. It might be more of a pattern or something they've felt in other relationships in their past, And then, it's more of an attachment style, I guess.
Yeah, I think a few things. I think that new relationship phase is also inherently insecure because you don't know where you stand yet. You don't know what this is going to be yet. And so people in all the styles might feel more preoccupied and like looking at their phone every 3 minutes for a reply, right? And just there's so much neurochemistry in that time period that it really can eclipse attachment styles. And I do see that once that neurochemistry wears off, which can take 3, 6, 9 months, then you might start seeing more of the attachment tendencies, especially if it's, avoidant or disorganized, and really any of them. Yeah.
Yeah, boy, I tell you, you talk about, someone who's nervous and is always looking at their phone, waiting for that next message. And the first thought I had was those blasted 3 dots that just, that just sends you into all types of just, oh God, neurochemistry is off the chain when that kind of happens, So anyway, so thank you guys for that very much. If I understand correctly, Kate has a question.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm curious, in your experience, both of you, and you too, Zach, if you've seen it, do you think, and maybe you talk about it in the book, but I haven't read it yet, that like a person, if a partner or somebody in the mix is a securely attached person, does that help settle their partners and like help them? I don't know, like what do you see with that? Or I don't know, I don't know if I'm asking the question.
Yeah. Are you saying like if someone has an insecure style and they're trying to work through that, is it helpful to have a secure partner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
I'd say absolutely. Unfortunately, that seems to be some of the prescription in a lot of the mono attachment world, is like they almost tell you like only date a secure person and that's the only way. And then you're like, well, what happens to all the other people, right? So yes, I would say if you are with a securely attached person or someone who can be in secure functioning with you, it is easy and it does really help. And in moments when you're wobbly and having, I mean, I would call them attachment flare-ups, and you have someone who can be really steady with you, it's so helpful. And yet, if you have two partners that have been more insecure and are looking to work on it together, it's totally possible too. Yeah.
Interesting.
And you don't have to only look towards romantic partners to help provide that example of good, secure attachment too. You can have other people in your life who are good demonstrators of that, who are good modelers of secure attachment, who can give that advice and give that support without it necessarily having to be someone you're engaged in a relationship with. Like, we don't only have to look to romantic partners to solve our problems. And one of my favorite things about non-monogamy, especially in the last couple of years, I've noticed this really taking off, that people describe each other as partners when it's not a sexual relationship, when it's not a highly romantic relationship, when the connections there are deep and important and valuable and familial and critical, but they're not necessarily about what happens in the bedroom or about physical affection. And I love it. And I think we need a lot more of that.
Yeah, not all of our attachment partners or attachment-based relationships are going to be romantic or sexual, right? I mean, it starts with parents, caregivers, but as adults, it can also be our best friends, our siblings, or people we just call partners. Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, and the only thing I would kind of add, as though I could add anything to what you amazing folks have said so far, is that
Of course you can.
I can see how someone who maybe is a little bit more securely attached would be of benefit to someone who isn't. However, that's only a benefit if it takes, like if it actually, does have, like you can see something modeled for you that is, going to be a little bit more helpful or healthy or however you want to say that. But if you don't adopt it, doesn't matter. So it's not to say that, if you are insecurely attached, you should definitely find somebody who is securely attached and then things will be great. You still kind of have to do some work and like anything else, you're gonna have to put it. It's not just I'm gonna go find this person who is a securely attached person. Somehow they're gonna fix whatever is wrong with me. The flip side of that, like you were saying, Jess, you can't just ignore everybody that's not securely attached, because I can just see it now. OkCupid has a new sort of criteria, and it's, are you securely attached
What's your
or not?
attachment style? Yeah.
And what's your attachment style? And I can just see people saying, I would like them. I'd swipe right, but not securely attached, and it hurts my heart because they're so hot.
Yeah.
But I just can't. I can't do it with another insecure. I can't go down that road. I can just see people kind of doing that, but at the same time, not necessarily. You still have to do the work. Everyone's got to do the work, right? So yeah, that's kind of what I see there.
And we covered that in last week's live stream, right? Where we just went into, these are not rigid typologies to start now just labeling people and writing them off, right? And to be careful of that, of course. And even people who are extremely secure for years, events can happen in your life. Job loss, pandemic, health change, that can create an insecurity that's really unexpected. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. Oops. What do I have here? So I am seeing a couple of questions in the chat. One of them is really interesting, asked by Andrea S., who says that basically asks how many people successfully transition from monogamy to poly, giving the example that she says, we were monogamous for 26 years. They were open for 4. They were successful, however that is defined, but then returned to monogamy as it felt like bombs all around us. Boy, I'd love to have a conversation with Andrea,
more, Andrea,
and her spouse. Yeah, I'm kind of fascinated by that. I mean, I almost want you to, hit me up with a DM or something, because I'm curious. But anyway, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, a quick thought is the very basic information, like census data that we have, says about 4 or 5% of people have identified as non-monogamous in some way. So in the US, I think that winds up being 16, 17 million people, right? But in terms of actual numbers of how many people have successfully transitioned, I don't know if anybody knows that. I will at least say, though, people do successfully transition, undoubtedly. Yeah. Securely married people were suddenly ready to get divorced. Yeah. So Andrea just said there's, seeing securely married people who probably opened up and then were ready to get divorced. And I see this happen because sometimes it appeared secure. And the process, right? And people really can look like ideal model couples, but a lot can be underground. And the process of switching the paradigm can be such a pressure cooker that a lot gets exposed. And there's many things in monogamy that we might tolerate that then no longer can become tolerable in non-monogamy with our partners. The other thing, though, is they might have really been secure, but there's just not enough cultural support yet for this mostly uncharted paradigm shift and path. There's Kate.
Oh, cool. Okay, fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then people haven't realized yet that they're having all these attachment struggles come up and they don't have the support for that. And yeah, relationships can crumble, but I don't think it's because of non-monogamy itself. Right? It's because of the paradigm and not having enough support in that paradigm or skills to be successful in the paradigm.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like the secure attachment in the monogamy was more like a sort of plaster kind of facade of security that was propped up by all these external forces that support secure attachment in monogamous structures. But then the minute you change that paradigm, suddenly you're all on your own, and it can feel, very much like being, out there on an island all by yourself, and it's one of the things I often tell people is, when you are practicing non-monogamy, don't talk about relationships with your muggle friends, because usually the first response is always, why don't you just go back to being normal? Like it's the first thing they tell you the minute things aren't going 100% perfect is to give up that non-monogamy mess. And I had to go through difficult times in non-monogamy to realize this is for me an orientation. And I love the fact that you mentioned that in the book, Jess, that for some people it's something they do, and for some people they feel like this is what they are. Because I really did hear that defined in myself, is that I did try the monogamy thing a couple different times and it just didn't work. And I have found that I've been happier even in my struggles in relationships and non-monogamy than I was monogamously. And so that it can very much be something that I learned about myself as a truth. So so I kind of find that interesting that it doesn't necessarily mean that it just didn't work out for some people. And the other thing is, I might mention, to Andrea S., who asked a great question, is that, you had 26 years of monogamy versus 4 of non-monogamy. I'm not saying you should put them on a balance scale, but, I just see 26 years as something that's hard to maybe open up. But whatever makes you happier at the end of the day is great for you. I'm not here to tell anybody that one is right or wrong or one is better or another. I know it's better for me, but I can only choose about me. So that's kind of the reality there. So thank you for that, because it was a very good question, very interesting.
I think it also depends, on like what you define as success, like a successful transition. Like, maybe the relationship ends, but both people are happier and know themselves better and are in different relationships that are more fulfilling to them. And like that to me is success, instead of like that relationship maintaining. And I do say that like to all my new people that come in, like I'm not here necessarily to like fight for this relationship to stay. I'm here for you as individuals and like what's best for you as individuals. And maybe that's the relationship maintaining, maybe it's transitioning, maybe it's ending, and that is success to me,
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Nolan, any thoughts?
I love what Kate just said. It's that idea that success is not fairy tale happily ever after. Everybody gets to go off with the prince or the princess. And I always love talking about that we see these fairy tales where it's like happily ever after. You know why the stories stop there? Because nobody knows what the rest of that would look like. How do you define happily ever after for a lifetime? What does that look like? What does that look like when you have kids? What does that look like when you have financial problems? What does that look like?
Right.
Like, who knows? Nobody really has a clear idea of that. And so it goes back to what Jess was saying earlier, that there are all these external things that put pressure on relationships and can add to that insecurity. And you can't look at any of this in a vacuum. Like, there's an entire thing. And going back to, I can't remember now whether it was Kate or Zach who said it, I apologize, but it was something that kind of led me to think about the importance of community and the importance of having that community of support, where if you are in the process of opening up, if you are in the process of struggling with a relationship, that you have people, like you said, who are non-muggles. It was Zach. I remember that because of the muggle comment. The people who are the non-muggles that you can talk to about it, who are going to say, yes, I understand, and can help you identify, yes, these are quote unquote normal processes that people who are opening up experience, versus, okay, this looks like something that's concerning. Maybe we need to talk about this. Maybe we need to get some help and support here, because the monogamous world is not going to be able to help you with that. The first advice is going to be, well, if you didn't want to be with this person, why don't you just end it? Or, well, why don't you just close and put everything back like it used to be? Why don't you rebuild that structure that you just got done tearing down?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it's, we're talking about attachments mostly here as far as romantic relationships. So we mentioned it earlier, those non-romantic relationships can be important. It may be how attached you are to other people in your sphere, your world, your local, whatever non-monogamous, polyverse, as I like to call it, looks like. And those attachments may support your romantic relationships, however they be attached. And, it's one of those things, again, like you're saying, Nolan, that you're right. Community can be so very important. And beneficial in all of this. So it's definitely something to consider. And Kate mentioning about, how you define success, that Andrea, who asked the question, 26 years of monogamy, 4 years of non-monogamy, you went back to monogamy. If you're happy, success. Hey, cool. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not saying that you tried something and it didn't work out, or that you were successful or not successful. If you didn't feel comfortable in it, I'd question whether it was successful, because, if you can't sleep at night, regardless of your attachment style or relationship, structure, orientation, that's the main thing is, is it causing you more no harm than good, in a sense? So,
right.
Yeah.
And in monogamy, failure is usually considered as divorce. And I think in polyamory, failures, you went back to monogamy, right? And it's not necessarily the case.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, we need to have another word here too, that I don't know if it fully exists, about being like monopoly fluid, or, panamorous, or, something that covers, like, certain relationships make more sense when they're monogamous. Certain relationships make more sense to be non-monogamous, and
Right.
people being allowed to go back and forth, basically, without judgment. Right.
Yeah.
I've heard people use the term ambiamorous for that, and I like that, kind of like ambidextrous.
I like that. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. We might be creating new poly phrases here as we're talking. It's I tend to refer to, like, whenever there is a monogamous partner and a polyamorous partner that are together, I call those monopoly, monopoly relationships. So I tend to call those monopoly relationships. That's just something that I came up with myself.
That's cute. I like it.
Yeah, but and of course the question is, can those work? And the answer is, yeah, they can. Not easy, and it requires a lot of conversation, but that's true of every relationship and every relationship style. But yeah, those mixtures can definitely exist there. I'm looking at some of the other questions that are asked. Yeah, there's the conversation about structural inequalities, as far as, attachment styles, not to mention intersections, whether there's ableism, racism, transphobia, there's deprioritization. I know one of the things I've often said is that when we start talking about additional partners, or whether they become hierarchies and stuff, sort of the further you go down the hierarchy, that person who is considered the fourth or fifth in line, whatever that means, can do all the work in the world and be as securely attached as possible. But if they're deprioritized, that kind of sucks and doesn't feel good. I've often told people there's nothing necessarily wrong with having or being a secondary partner. When you start to feel like you're secondary to your partner, that becomes an issue. because it's very much, the way you treat them. And if this person is by definition an afterthought, that can kind of be hairy. But I don't want to, judge or cast aspersions on anyone who themselves practices some sort of hierarchy if it works for them. I just know that I've seen that, and just in the little bit of sort of discussion and discussion groups I've led as far as that. If anybody's listening right now, we've got just a couple more minutes. I want to give them the opportunity to ask any questions that we haven't quite answered yet. Being greedy, I'm sorry. That's hey, it's cool though. But it does sound like success. Again, Andrea asks if you guys are happy and felt like you had an amazing marriage and didn't want to mess with the formula. Kudos.
Yeah, well,
good for you. Yeah.
And that's unfortunately a lot of people do, like the judgment is that non-monogamous folks are being greedy, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah, because it's how dare you be happy with more than one person? That's just not cool. Which it's a shame, because I kind of think we could all use a little bit more love. So
I think some of that comes. I think some of that comes from the mono world, because in the monogamous world, the only models a lot of times that we have for non-monogamous relationships are kind of harem building situations where it's one person who has a large number of partners, but the partners can only have that person. And that does appear to be greedy, and that does appear to be very selfish and self-centered, where most forms of ethical non-monogamy don't function like that. They usually allow all partners to have multiple partners, which then kind of cuts back on that greediness. So I think that's what it comes down to, is that we have had very few healthy, really egalitarian models for non-monogamy throughout history. I'm not going to say we haven't, but the ones that get promoted in monocentric culture oftentimes are that, and it's almost always one man with multiple women who are in subservient positions or lesser power positions to one powerful man. And we see that over and over and over again, and it becomes a weird power fantasy that's mixed in with the non-monogamy, and separating those two things can be very hard for some people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kate, any other questions or thoughts you want to discuss before we start to move towards wrapping this thing up?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I was thinking about, I think one of the questions we had on the forum was like, what other therapeutic styles might you use? And I'm just curious too, because we're talking about like building attachments with other people, like besides partners and friends, and like not forgetting the therapist's importance in that. And like that probably depends on your style, but my style is very interpersonal, and so you can heal attachment injuries, and you can have experiences with the therapist that help create more of a bond, or like a foundation for becoming more securely attached that you can then take out to friendships and partners. And so I guess maybe we could just talk about that. Or have you had that same experience, or what are your styles as therapists too? I'm just curious about that.
Great question. Well, yes, I've definitely had that experience, both with my own therapist that I've had in the past, who became, people who really helped me heal my attachment styles. And then I have that experience with my own clients where I realize, oh yeah, I've become a loving attachment figure, basically. And that's a big part of the therapy. But in terms of some of the styles, I mean, I think if you're going to be working with non-monogamous folks and attachment, there also needs to be a lot of trauma-informed work. And to me, that really includes also polyvagal theory, and just really understanding how the nervous system and triggers work, and how to work with the different states of the nervous system. But my big love is internal family systems.
Oh, yeah.
Which of course makes sense, because it's about multiple inner parts, right? So here we are, one body that has many different inner parts, and in the ways that we might have many different outer partners, right? So I think dealing with attachment and trauma and non-monogamy, I feel like the internal family systems, inner parts work, just for me, it works really well. I love it. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to say one or the other. I'm still sort of developing mine and learning about them as I go. So I'm still kind of where, I know my style as far as talking to individuals and some of the coaching and sort of just answering up questions I've done in regards to non-monogamy. But as far as, coming at it from a clinician standpoint of view. I'm still developing that eye and that sort of style a little bit. But that's why this conversation is so much fun to me, because I'm picking up notes as I'm going through. So, Nolan?
I'm a little unusual. I started out very much in the field of reality therapy and choice theory. I studied with Dr. William Glasser before he passed. And so I approach a lot of things from that internal, external locus of control as like the starting point of, okay, what are you able to control and what aren't you? And I work a lot in that quality world and comparing that to your reality and saying, okay, so how do you address this? How do you address the difference between what you want and what you're seeing in your reality? What do you have control over changing and what do you need to work towards acceptance on? And I've found that works really well for me in working with a lot of these issues within, especially couples and that are opening up and first exploring that is, okay, so you're upset about this. What part of this do you have control over? What part of this is something that is within your realm? And what part of this is outside of it where you need to just acknowledge rather than trying to control, and working on putting the emphasis on not trying to control your partner, not trying to control the dynamics outside of yourself. And I find that works really well. And that I've also done some other work and training in family systems things. And so I apply that into family systems. And a lot of people have called me kind of a heretic for that. But I find that it works really well because it's about taking accountability for the parts that are you, and then about using those system theories to then negotiate and discuss and communicate the parts that are outside of yourself. And you have to work on both areas together to be successful. So that's how I do my work, and I found that it works really well.
Wow, fantastic. And as usual, I find that I've come close to the end of our time, and I could ask so many more questions, but I may just have to bug you guys privately about some of this stuff. So does anybody else have anything? We've got just a few minutes before we start kind of wrapping up here and letting folks go. But I do want to mention that, first of all, this has been phenomenal for me. So thank you guys for having me do this again. This has been really fun. I'm actually honored to know all of you. Just, I think socially, not to mention soon to be colleagues and things like that. So really appreciating this. Again, Jess, love the book. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
That book, Polysecure, is out. It is out now via Thorntree Press. However, paper copies have sold out. But if you've got a Kindle, you can download it right now. Those of us that did both have kind of pre-ordered and are waiting for our paper copies. Trust me, folks, the book is worth it. The read is worth it. It's one of those ones that I'm going to, once I get my paper copy put on the shelf, it's going to stay with me wherever I go because it will be useful. I usually like to ask the author what's next, but
I can tell you.
Go for it. Tell me what's next. I'm curious.
There is audiobook too. For those of you who don't like to read, you can listen. But what's next? Is in February, I'm launching a Secure Attachment with Self online live program. It's going to be a 4-month program, sort of becoming your own safe haven. And so it's going to be, you'll have weekly live sessions and a ton of videos and, materials for people to really work through healing their attachment. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be an amazing program.
Nice. Yeah. Good deal. Great. All right. Anything else?
All right.
Well, hey, thanks again, you guys, for listening to Three Therapists and Zach talk a little bit about this amazing book. Again, it's called Polysecure. Go get it. It is definitely worthwhile. Meanwhile, thank you so much wherever you are. Stay safe. And yeah, be good to each other.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.